Noah, the stars were out last night at the Sixers game. Of course, Brooklyn Nets, Simmons, and Embiid. It brings the stars out. McNabb, Freddie Mitchell, and his hands were there. I saw Julius Erving was there, as well as, of course, Allen Iverson. Do you ever get starstruck at all sometimes in this industry? We definitely can run to or bump into people. Did that ever happen to you?
I'd say it doesn't happen very much. It just becomes part of the job that you're interacting and having relationships with people that are, I guess, considered celebrities by others. But I would say here and there. So for me, Allen Iverson would still be an example of that, just because he has the charisma and the star power, even well past his playing days. And he's, of course, the guy for me and for many people who led you to love the sport and provided a ton of, great memories of just pure excitement and just so much coolness to him that I think still permeates his being.
Sure.
And then it might sound a little odd, but like Stephen A. Smith, when he shows up to the arena, he has a star factor. Mm-hmm. I think he is just so omnipresent in the media and has such a distinct and large personality that actually being in the same room as him leaves you a little starstruck. I don't think that would be a wrong word to describe the feeling when Stephen A. Makes his way back to Philly.
I agree with everything you said. And also, I think the thing, it doesn't happen often. So when it does, it kind of strikes you a little bit. But one thing that, and not necessarily starstruck, but when I first met Mark Zumoff, he pronounced my name wrong. And he came up from the arena floor to the studio to apologize to me. And I was whoa, this is Mark. I just started the job. I had never met him before. And his voice is so velvety. And it just hearing his voice and him being, apologetic to me, it was definitely made me feel humbled a little bit. You know what I mean? So it definitely happens in the industry. I interviewed Allen Iverson and Ice Cube once for a Big Three thing. And that was a lot of fun, and people you never think you'll meet that you come across in this industry. So, I think it comes with the territory. It's all about how you handle it, right, Noah?
Absolutely, I would echo your sentiments with Zoo. I think it's the same phenomenon in some ways as with Stephen A., where he is such a part of your life without you actually realizing it or being in the same space as him. And then, of course, you're struck by his humility and his kindness when you do meet him. But absolutely, it's not normal for me. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said I never feel a little of the star presence or am a little awestruck. I was even talking about this recently with our friend Paul Hudrick, who could theoretically create a starstruck impression of us. And we were going through maybe some of our favorite actors or directors, might have that ability. So I will keep you posted if anyone stops by a Sixers game that manages to have that impression on me. But Allen Iverson is pretty much always going to. I think he's the utmost. I think for me and for so many people when it comes to NBA greatness and coolness and star power, and you feel like even when he's 80 years old, he's still going to be able to pull all that off. And I think Julius Erving's probably similar for folks of a certain generation, where there's just this everlasting cool that is who he is.
Ready to build career skills in 2023? Apply to Wilmington University today and get started by March 6th. Learn more and apply at wilmu.edu. Upskill, reskill, or start fresh in 2023 with a degree or certificate from Wilmington University. WilMU works for you. Apply today to start March 6th. Yeah, baby, the Sixers Talk podcast, all up in your earpiece. Thanks for joining us here. I'm Danny Pommells, along with Noah Levick. and our producer extraordinaire, Ben Berry, in the cut. We're brought to you by Wilmington University, and your 76ers have the longest winning streak currently in the NBA at 6 games. The start of a 4-game homestand was an emotional game, to say the least, last night, Noah. They get the victory, 137-133. To throw a few numbers out at you guys, the Sixers gave up the most points that they've given up in the first quarter of this season. They scored the most points that they scored in the first quarter of this season. And they came out with the victory in a high-scoring affair. Ben Simmons back in the fold with plenty of boos, and the crowd was really into it. I was upstairs in the studio preparing to do some stuff. Noah, you were in the bowl, in the arena. What did you take in from all the excitement and technical fouls and all the back and forth that was going on?
Yeah, just pure chaos. And I think Doc Rivers was accurate after the game when he said it was a boxing crowd that wouldn't have minded if the ball just got tossed to the side. And
they just start duking it out. Like,
yeah.
All right.
So I think that was most definitely the vibe, but strange first quarter, and then ended 41 all. And it was like, all right, maybe we get a little more normalcy in this game, but I don't think it ever had the feel of a typical regular season game, both in good and bad ways. I think the positive is this was an amped up crowd in large part because the Sixers have been playing great. This was their 19th win in 23. And of course, the offense for large stretches of this game was hyper efficient. But of course, the Ben Simmons angle was unavoidable. And I think perhaps the most memorable moment of the night for me is like a minute into the game, everyone sees, okay, Joel Embiid has the post-up opportunity on Ben Simmons, and you just hear and feel this crescendo of, people are cheering just at the mere fact that Embiid is getting to face Ben Simmons for the first time. And I think, Joel Embiid didn't have his greatest game. He had, 26 points, which dropped his average on the year to 33.4. And I think, clearly was struggling physically with this lingering left foot issue. But I think just being able to see Embiid versus Simmons, and of course the Sixers winning the game despite not having their greatest performance of the year, very satisfying to all the Sixers fans in attendance. And one of those nights that basketball did feel like a sideshow at times. We had professional wrestling style celebrations. We had Twitter back and forth. We had, I think, 6 technical fouls. We had George Yang getting under Ben Simmons' skin successfully. So a lot of
Embiid and Claxton going nose to nose.
Right. Embiid accusing Nick Claxton of crossing some sort of line, which most definitely will be remembered when these teams match up again. But basketball-wise, the Sixers did what they had to do. They certainly scored plenty of points and got the job done despite squandering a 17-point lead in this one. But I think the atmosphere, the intensity, the emotion, all of that stuff stands out more, honestly, than what happened on the court.
This was a late start, a 7:30 schedule tip-off that bled into like 7:50-ish for the start of the game. And the first quarter took 40 minutes of real time, 40 minutes just for the first quarter. So it just gives you an idea of all that went on and all that transpired. It was a game the Sixers won, but didn't play their best basketball. So it's tough to kind of read that because they let the Nets shoot 60% from the floor. They still get the win. Seth Curry comes off the bench and goes for 32. And take that into account as well, because he's playing against one of his former teams as well. So he's, coming in with, a little bit of a chip on his shoulder to kind of prove, what he is and what he was and how valuable he is. So do you kind of, which side of the equation are you on? Of course, winning is the, ultimate goal, but at the same time, they come off this, strong road trip and then come home and give up 60% shooting to a team without Kevin Durant.
Yeah, it did honestly feel a little burn the tape-ish to me, just because the emotions were so prominent in the game. I don't think there's a ton to take away in terms of necessary changes defensively. Obviously, they had limited success there, and some of that you got to tip your cap. I mean, Kyrie Irving was doing a lot of spectacular stuff, and
very the price of admission.
Yeah, just some of these layups with unreal grace and hang time. And Seth Curry, okay, some of those looks are inexcusably open, but used his pump fake really well and hit tough contested shots that the Sixers know he's capable of making. So yeah, I think big picture, I'm not inclined to say there's anything gravely disturbing or anything massively encouraging for this game from the Sixers. I think in terms of a trend standpoint, Tyrese Maxey off the bench, still a big thumbs up. I mean, he gave the Sixers 27 points, and I think you can just see there's no drop-off here when he's on the floor and Embiid and Harden are off of it. Okay, maybe the Sixers aren't as lethal and don't have quite as many options, but when Maxey is rolling and when he is finally getting some shooters' roles, he's just a fantastic player capable of these really dynamic scoring spurts. And then I thought some of the other guards had like an underrated impact, which again to me is a trend this year. Like D'Anthony Melton, really efficient in terms of his shooting, and then just grabs massive offensive board that he kicks out to Maxey for a huge three late. And I thought Shake Milton, the numbers weren't overwhelming, but just in that second quarter, reminding the Nets, Tyrese Maxey isn't the only second unit guard who can score, who can put pressure on us in the paint. He got a big offensive board too. Just some of those little peripheral contributions that have so often been decisive for the Sixers. They continue to be there and help them, win basketball games. But the game itself, in terms of this is indicative of the Sixers needing to change X, Y, or Z. I don't think I really buy into that to a great degree. I think clearly their defense has been a little more inconsistent than they'd like, but you're going to have a stinker here and there, and I think they breathe a sigh of relief knowing that they survived this one and did just enough to win the game despite Brooklyn shooting almost 65% from the floor and getting huge scoring games from Curry and Irving.
Let's stay there with the Maxey conversation a bit, because he had an interesting comment just about his role after the game, and specifically saying that when you're out there on the floor and Harden and Embiid are there and they're, working their two-man game, our roles as the other supporting players are really just catch and shoot once we get the ball, because maybe the shot clock's winding down, or that is what was set up from the action of those two guys, is that, the action and the attention was there, and then there's open shots for the other guys. But he added that when I come in, off the bench, my opportunity is there just to be more aggressive. And that is played significantly into him continuing to develop and grow after being out for those 7-8 weeks of time. So I think it's another moment to kind of pat the coaching staff on the back, because they made this sort of difficult decision to bring Maxey off the bench, and maybe not difficult in their eyes because they saw what he could do in that regard. And also they needed to pick up the defense a bit. And you're not going to sit James Harden and bring him off the bench. So something had to give. But interesting observation for me from him as he continues to play in this role. And I mean, this dude could be sixth man of the year if they continue, or had started the season this way and it continued like it is.
Yeah, it's something. You look at Harden and Maxey are neck and neck in terms of the scoring average, right around 21.5 points per game for the both of them. And yeah, I think honestly Tyrese Maxey is fully able to score at a high level regardless of role, but I think he's spot on that there's generally more simplicity with what's asked of him. when he's next to two stars who have perhaps the most lethal pick and roll combination in the game. I think, of course, we've hoped to see, more ways to feature him offensively, even when he is next to two high usage guys. But absolutely, there tends to be more catch and shoot in his game when he's next to Embiid and Harden. I do think, though, we don't want to just go overboard in saying that he is always going to be best as the sixth man and he's always going to be best playing a high percentage of minutes without stars. Like, you look pretty high sample size over the last couple of years, him with the Sixers' best players. The offense is excellent. The team's net rating is really high. And part of that's James Harden is just so fantastic at those hit-ahead passes and feeding Maxey in transition, where I think when Maxey doesn't have Harden on the court with him, he needs to do more self-creation, of course, for better and for worse. But yeah, no doubt the early returns on that are incredibly encouraging. And I think it also speaks to Tyrese Maxey's maturity that he understands the difference in role and embraces that without any degree of ego. He understands whatever the team needs from him. It's just his job to check those boxes, and doing that in a fabulous style thus far.
I picked this up from the ESPN pregame show, but Maxey is 15 in the top 15% in the NBA in running or jogging up the floor, and Embiid and Harden are in the top 3 in the NBA of walking up the floor. So it just shows a different approach. You know what I mean? A different approach and how they contribute. And we mentioned Melton a little bit earlier. He seems to be kind of the glue to this whole thing because his willingness, and a la Tobias Harris, to be versatile and play whatever role is needed of him, and particularly his stalwart defense and that anchoring his game just makes it so easy to have him on the floor with whoever's out there. And, he's a guy that is kind of taking in this atmosphere of being a Philadelphia sports fan. His first time, seeing the Ben Simmons treatment, with him out on the floor and getting booed every time he touched it and stuff like that. So it's interesting to see sometimes these guys who are not, haven't experienced this Philadelphia thing that we have, and him taking it all in. What are some of your other takeaways from the game?
Yeah, just to the walking, running disparity, I would say I think there's some nuance to that in that Tyrese Maxey is now an excellent catch and shoot player, and he gets more very good catch and shoot looks when he shares the floor with two stars. And then also, to me, James Harden might be one of the best in the league at that hit-ahead pass and weaponizing Maxey's speed in a way that just is impossible when Harden's sitting on the bench. So
right.
I think there are pros and cons of, the various lineups they can use him with. But I think what's most encouraging is that he understands those stylistic differences and how to maximize his own talents, within those different lineups. But yeah, D'Anthony Melton just continues to be a winning player for this team. I mean, we talked very early in the season about this incredible knack for doing things atypical of guards, and that offensive board to me was a great example of it. Like, I think many guards wouldn't even be thinking about crashing the glass in that situation. They'd be worried of Brooklyn getting a transition opportunity and think that, that might hurt their team late in the game. But no, Melton, just without thinking, sees the opportunity, grabs the board, creates 3 points for the Sixers. So every night is not going to be, 7 for 10 from the floor, but even when the shot's not falling, he's just so consistently a glue guy. I think it's the perfect description for D'Anthony Melton. I mean, I think the Sixers' defense, though flawed, was at least effectively disruptive at times. I think they forced 16 turnovers, many of those in the first half, and Melton got 3 blocks, including a couple from behind on Kyrie Irving, and Matisse Thybulle did his job quite well. 12 minutes, 10 points, and 3 steals, and I think you can just tell when he's on the floor and he's guarding a smaller guard, he tends to bother them with his size and his athleticism, and I think just gave you a sense of the ways in which he could perhaps help the Sixers in a playoff series last night. To me, that was the classic blueprint for Matisse Thybulle being a helpful postseason player. Again, we could get into the whole discussion of whether more than 12 minutes were warranted, but I think regardless, Thybulle's defense in this one was a plus, and Melton, he certainly did not stop Kyrie Irving, at least was effectively disruptive and did his thing on both ends of the court in a way that perhaps flew under the radar on a night when, a million things were happening.
Injured? For over 70 years, Lundy Law has been the #1 personal injury law firm in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. Their services are exemplary. Their results are exceptional. Call 1-800-LUNDY-LAW to get the money you deserve. Opioid addiction is a national public health crisis. The Someone You Know podcast from the Independence Blue Cross Foundation offers inspiring stories that challenge stigma, offer hope, and humanizes the disease of addiction. Download the new season 3 of Someone You Know on all major podcast platforms. Picking up a little bit of that Kyrie Irving conversation, man, what a talent he is. And I don't know if take for granted is the right expression, but, in all of the flat earth and vaccination and anti-Semitism stuff that he's gone through, you just kind of lose focus on how fantastic he is with the basketball, and just a few jaw-dropping plays last night. And he almost helped bring the Nets all the way back to win that game. And you can see why, they are such a threat. And with Kevin Durant added into the fold, just exciting to see. But nonetheless, the Sixers beat the Nets. They're firmly in that second place in the Eastern Conference currently, with a very tight group around them. But interesting homestand here with 4 games in South Philly. The Denver Nuggets are on the horizon, and the Sixers seem to be coming together and peaking at the right time, heading into the All-Star break and with the trade deadline approaching here February 9th.
They sure hope so. I think, a win over Denver would boost the confidence even further. And, just continue to stack as many as you can.
Any chance you feel like there might be any lingering soreness for Embiid going into Saturday's game? Or since it was such an issue going into this one, do you feel like that might be something that fans should be paying attention to?
Yeah, 100%. He's not at full health right now. He is well practiced at sort of slightly avoiding direct questions regarding his health, but he acknowledged it remains something he has to push through. And you even notice in this game on the play where he draws Joe Harris's 6th foul, he's really grabbing his right shoulder and grimacing, and that is something that's even been noticeable, I think, in multiple games this season. So he's determined to have that warrior mentality and play through pain, but the Sixers understand his big picture importance, and if he's not feeling good on Saturday, he won't play in that game. I think we all sort of knew that if it was at all a question, he would make his case strongly to actually face Ben Simmons for the first time and appear in this game. But to my mind, like, even putting his personal assessment and comments aside, he didn't look completely healthy. There were quite a few plays where he was slow to join the Sixers and their half-court offense, or didn't look as agile as usual around the rim. I think you also have to give credit to Nick Claxton, 25 points, 11 for 12 from the floor, 11 boards. He didn't just bother Joel Embiid, like he also played quite well. But yeah, to me, Embiid didn't look that great and hasn't sounded like he feels his best since these left foot issues popped up for him in late November. So worth keeping on the radar, and I'm not sure there's going to be great certainty about his status anytime soon. That's just the reality, even if it's not what the Sixers would want to hear at this stage.
Yeah, I wonder if he'll have that same excitement and that petitioning nature to get on the floor against Nikola Jokic, the guy he's finished runner-up to at the MVP voting the last 2 years. And everyone wants to see that matchup, of course, and particularly with Denver having the best record in the NBA and playing like they are. It would be, I guess they have to throw caution to the wind and protect their big man and keep him healthy, but these are the matchups that kind of help maybe some voters decide, which way they'll lean when it comes to the MVP stuff. It's funny because Embiid looked like he was playing with so much emotion in that first half. Doc Rivers talked about it after the game of using the emotions in the right way. It just seemed like, especially the crowd starts cheering and all of a sudden he's trying to back Ben down and, kind of a little out of sorts with his footwork or what move he wanted to use. So it was, funny seeing him play with that emotion. And I think if you were just, speculating that he was playing with emotion and weren't quite sure, I think it was confirmed when he doubled down and responds to KD's tweet before coming to the podium with the D-Generation X mashup with him and like them on Twitter because KD criticized his celebration thrusts during the game. But this guy goes into the locker room and is, notorious for taking a long time to come out and speak to the media. But during that time, sends out this tweet with this like heavily edited video. He's just one of a kind, man. Just a certain type of guy.
Yeah, and I thought he summed it up perfectly when he said, like, I'm all about enjoying the game, and I had a good time tonight in quite a few ways. But yeah, he often takes quite a bit of time between the final buzzer and the post-game media session, and he was, sitting at his locker and, kind of becoming aware of the response on social media. I saw Jimmy Butler perhaps jokingly said he should be fined $75K. And, it certainly drew a reaction, that celebration. And yeah, then he sends out this response tweet, and then seconds later strides up to the podium, and within a second or two, he can't keep a straight face. He kind of starts cracking up at his own mischief. So he's talked a lot over the years about he needs to balance maturity and joy and trash talk, but I think the trash talking, trolling side won out on the night. And yeah, it did probably contribute to him playing with a little less control and a little less poise than would have been ideal. But there were also instances where you saw it led him to be ruthlessly aggressive. Like Ben Simmons takes his first shot of the game late in the second quarter, misses a little righty hook, and Embiid grabs the rebound and just makes a beeline to the paint, seals, deep in there and gets a layup. That's the kind of thing Hakeem Olajuwon wants to see, where he's using his physical strength in an overwhelming way. Obviously not doable in every single possession, but yeah, the aggressive, just totally imposing, physically impossible to guard version of Joel Embiid, some of that does coincide with anger and emotion and the raw intensity that was on display last night. I think perhaps an underrated part of his game in a positive way is 13 for 13 from the foul line. And the Sixers,
as a team, yes, 35 for
36. And look this up just before. They are number one in the NBA now in free throw percentage at 83.0%.
What a feather in the cap.
Yeah, a lot of that's Joel Embiid, who is at over 86% right now. And I think back to, I believe, a couple years ago, he put it out there that he wants to be like Dirk Nowitzki, and he's shooting over 90% in a season. I think it would require something unbelievable to manage that this year, but at some point, perhaps that's attainable. A 7-footer shooting 90+% at the foul line. And when that's a guy taking more free throws than anyone in the league, that is massively valuable. So a lot of his night, I think, was chaotic and was ruled by emotion, but I think at its core, he did, one of the skills that he is best at, which is drawing and making free throws. And that's a big reason the Sixers pulled it out.
I think people should enjoy, I think is a good word, the role Kevin Durant played in that whole trolling situation, because he knew his audience at that moment. He puts out, the celebration was weak or whatever he said, and he asked Joel directly. Like he knew how to get to Embiid with that.
Yeah, they've had a couple of on-court exchanges too. There was the one in Brooklyn, I think it was last.
I think that was in the montage. That was in the degeneration.
Yeah, that was smartly woven in. I also enjoyed, I guess, the irony too of the first frame where Embiid's doing the celebration and Ben Simmons is enjoying it, standing right next to him after a bucket against Karl Anthony Towns, and Simmons was cheering him on, and that was not so much the case on this night. But Ben Simmons obviously will come away a bit disappointed, even if he didn't have any horrible or embarrassing moments individually against Embiid. But scoreless first half, came on strong in the third quarter, increased the aggression. But the bottom line here is he didn't play the final 9 minutes of the game, and that felt like a logical decision because Brooklyn's offense was thriving without him, and they had a lot more shooting and a lot more options when Ben Simmons wasn't on the floor in the fourth quarter. So that was, I'm sure, tough for him to see that his teammates lost it, as he was watching from the sidelines. And, oh, by the way, James Harden comes down and with the score tied, nails back-to-back three-pointers, drives in for a nice explosive layup, and I think shows his value in the clutch that, yeah, he can create and make some really big-time shots. And we all know that is a weakness for Ben Simmons.
I think that you hit on a specific point that we talked about on Sportsnet Central, but so much of the crowd's interest was seeing Embiid and Simmons go at it. And, there had been this storyline among the Sixers fandom that just because those guys don't hang out doesn't mean they're not friends, they're cool and things like that. We can tell that they're not cool now, but that matchup was so pertinent to people that you kind of lost sight of the fact that the trade was for Harden and Simmons. And that's really the comparison of who won the trade and, was it worth it? And did they get the right pieces? And did they send the right pieces away? And all that is the comparison of those two guys on the court, of how Harden played and how Simmons played. And your point right there of Simmons not playing the last 9 minutes and the offense thriving without him, and Harden hitting the big shots to help push the Sixers over the top, I think is an important point to make.
Yeah, that was a really major juxtaposition, and yeah, hard to avoid just how stark that contrast was. I do think also, though, we should not forget that Seth Curry was traded, and
I know
he didn't have a bad night. Doc Rivers, I think, amusingly voiced his frustration, that his son-in-law had such a big game. He said he was thinking about visiting his grandkids in a couple of days, and now he's not so sure. But Seth Curry, was fired up and has enjoyed this matchup on a couple of occasions versus a team that he doesn't think should have included him in that deal. And of course, as we've discussed before, Andre Drummond is no longer a Sixer as a result of this trade, and TBD on whether the Sixers will get sufficiently good backup center play in the playoffs. Whereas, of course, Drummond, would have been a strong theoretical option there if he was still a Sixer. But yeah, he obviously had to give up significant players to get James Harden. We all knew that. And that was a great illustration of Harden's value. I mean, I think the Sixers seemed on the verge of a collapse, which I feel like we've said a million times this year. And then it was just, all right, James Harden, a couple step backs,
contested ones.
We're all okay now. Yeah, just totally bailing them out when their offense had become unnecessarily deliberate. To me, it didn't feel like the Sixers actually struggled to break down the Nets zone. It was just they saw the zone and thought, all right, let's pass it around. Let's try to find those soft spots. Let's maybe sit on our lead a little bit and run some clock. And obviously, that's not the approach you want to adopt. But hey, if you have James Harden on your team, he can make all of that feel pretty irrelevant and just turn a tie game into a 6-point lead with a snap of his fingers.
Couple of days between games here as we're recording this podcast on Thursday. The Sixers play Saturday again in this 4-game homestand against the Denver Nuggets, as we mentioned. Noah, I'm sure it gives you some time to kind of take a step back. Is there anything on the website people should check out that you're working on?
Yeah, so just have a piece recapping the many juicy parts of Joel Embiid's night. And then tonight we will actually get the results of the NBA All-Star starter voting. So, stay tuned for that. We'll also be at the Sixers Youth Foundation Gala tonight. We're hoping to hear from Julius Erving, Allen Iverson, some other Sixers alumni there in support of the Sixers Youth Foundation. So that'll hopefully be cool, and perhaps those guys will lend some perspective on the current team. Iverson was there last night and got
everybody. McNabb was there.
McNabb, yeah, it was a star-studded evening. Yeah, but like
Jazzy Jeff rang the bell
and rang it very well.
Yeah,
but yeah, you're never going to top, I think, Allen Iverson if you're talking about just pure volume and adulation from the crowd.
Sure.
So yeah, hopefully we'll see him again tonight at the Sixers Youth Foundation Gala, and yeah, then some more content, just where this team is at in the big picture, pulling off these wins that are flawed but victories nonetheless, and some coverage, of practice Friday heading into the Nuggets matchup. So yeah, quite a bit down the pike, and some exciting times, if you're a Sixers fan. 19 of 23, like it feels wild to say, I think, about a team that was 0-3, was 12-12, had two 20-plus point per game scorers out with significant injuries. But hey, here they are, and some interesting times to come in the near future here.
Well said, Noah. Great insight and perspective there, and putting everything in the proper parameters. So be sure to check out our website, NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com, and all of Noah Levick's work. We appreciate you listening to the Sixers Talk podcast, brought to you by Wilmington University. WilMU Works. For Noah Levick and Ben Berry, I'm Danny Pommells. We'll see you next time.